All right, we're live. Good morning, folks. We're going to see whether my connection will hang out this morning and actually let us do this thing. So we'll see. As I reset everything in my network, see whether I can get this to actually stream okay. So we'll see whether restarting the entire network solves some of the issues. We'll kill something in the background there. And I'm refreshing to see whether the Judiciary Committee is starting to post their stream yet. Anyway, this morning, Sister Brooke Cheney is actually going to be testifying in Connecticut about their retarded gun laws they're trying to pass out of the Judiciary Committee this morning. Let me see. I had it up earlier. The list of the bills is actually in the description of this video. Let me see something. There's one bill ahead of everything. And it depends on which order they take these bills in. I'm hoping they get rid of this one bill quick. About transfers to juvenile court. Then you've got the implementation of the Firearms Industry Responsibility Act, which I've got to read through, but I guarantee it's like a lot of the other firearms responsibility acts that I've seen, where it will just make it easy to sue any company selling firearms if a firearm is used in a crime. It makes it a way to bleed people out of business, is what it is. DJ Play Nice, my brother, how is you this morning? Run Gun Bingus, what is up, brother, man? All the perps are checking in this morning. Good deal. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully my connection hangs out this morning and we can stream this. I won't be able to go all morning in one shot. What I will more than likely do is stream the first part of this, and then probably be closer to about 12. I'll have to shut down for a little bit, and then I'll crank it back up. And then I'll just be in the chat because I'll be at work, just kind of sharing the pain with you guys. Let's see, what was the other one? This one I've got to look into. Concerning a duty to retreat in a house of worship, there should be no such thing as a duty to retreat in the first place, much less when you're in a house of worship. Conviction in another jurisdiction is a disqualifier for a permit for firearms eligibility and ammunition certificate. And also concerning a merchant category for firearms and ammunition retailers. So they're trying to track your credit card purchases there. And an act concerning self-defense concerning the transfer of large capacity magazines and assault weapons. So it looks like a magazine and assault weapons ban there. So they got a bunch of stuff going on in Connecticut this morning. None of it good, apparently. Now, this is the Judiciary Committee. So I don't know how things are necessarily in Connecticut. Brooke will know way better than me, considering she's up there and she's going to be testifying. If it's like a lot of others, they will just slam this through no matter the testimony against it, just like they did in Colorado last night. From what I understand, Colorado passed 003 out of their committee last night. It was late last night. Hell, it was 12 o'clock my time, a little after, and they were still going through amendments. So there are definitely fired up and trying to get a lot of this passed. Now, a lot of these bills get written by Brady, they get written by Giffords, and a lot of gun control groups. They just get passed around to Democrat legislatures, and then they start trying to pass these things through. Um, it's really insane the way it works, but see, it is the way it is. Sunlight makes it look like he's in his 20s. Oh yeah, something like that. 20s, like born in 1920s, at least the way I feel. So we'll see. You guys pull up the coffee this morning, rolling the bat mug because these people are batshit crazy. Ready as possible. Good deal, Brooke. I know you'll get out there and slam it. So, too many choices, my brother. How are you doing this morning? Let's see something. We got to fix something. So far, they don't have theirs up yet. Let's see. And again, I'll throw, once they start, I'll throw the link to the stream and stuff, or their stream, down in the chat. So in case my connection does go absolutely ape shit like it normally does, if you guys still wanted to watch it, you guys can watch it too. You can bet it's going to be absolutely retarded as normal, though. I mean, same old same for the anti-gun crews. Why am I not seeing? Why am I not seeing Brooks' chat over on the YouTube side? I see it on StreamYard side, but not on the YouTube side. Oh, I guess YouTube's going to YouTube. For sure, for sure. Check the voice. So let's see. Let me check this again. No, they're not up yet. Let me go to their YouTube. Judiciary Committee. No, they got the public hearing up from yesterday. 8 days ago, 13 days ago. They don't have theirs up yet. So we'll see how long we can roll it this morning. I'm still wondering why Brooks' chat is not showing up on my YouTube side. It's showing up on the StreamYard side. I know I'm more than a little half-ass crazy, but go to my subscriptions. I had it up earlier with the link for the bills and then the order for testimony. Don't see what I did with that. So we'll see. Let me try to keep an eye on this. Muffin Top, my brother, how are you? Dude, I missed your stream last night. I was still goofing trying to listen to Colorado. How and why to testify. Oh, that's Brooks' live stream from yesterday. Okay. The link to it should be in the community post, I thought, DJ. I was half asleep when I put it together this morning, so we'll see. Come on, let me refresh this. So looks like they're going to wait for the last minute to post this morning. Or get their stream rolling, which fits. And I follow a lot of different legislatures. It's ridiculous. Which I'm waiting to see with some other bills that come up in Alabama. They're bad about not posting when their public testimony is to like the day before. So we'll see, because there might be a time where I might be testifying in Alabama shortly. Lightning Scott, my brother, what is up? Good morning. Try to see if you could load the links. I could not. See. Because anytime I try to load the link from their Judiciary, it brings me to their YouTube channel, and I'm not showing anything on their YouTube channel just yet. Really just hoping that my freaking connection will hang out this morning and allow me to stream this. Schedule pages. Yeah. Let me see, because I had their stuff up earlier. ctga.gov. No, that's the bill information. Where's it at? Where is it at? All right, Wednesday. So I'm going to switch that back to the calendar. 10 a.m. Judiciary. All right, here it is. That finally came up. Let's see. Let me screen share that. And I'm going to couple tabs. Let's see. Speaker order, testimony. Let's see. Let me throw this in chat because this is the speaker order for this morning. And I'm going to shut my camera down. Hopefully, y'all cross fingers and toes. What the? Okay, so that went through. It's like it's going to act crazy, but we'll see how it does. Luton, so glad you escaped alive. Yeah, I can see that. So we are going to see how this goes this morning. Let's There's a lot of anonymous opposes. In fact, looking at this for the speakers list shows whether they oppose or whether they are for the bill. And I'm not seeing anybody in support of the bill, it looks like. And they've got, this is going to be going all day, looks like. There's Brooke on the list. She's a ways down. They don't really have them listed like 1, 2, 3, but it looks like she's a ways down, but man, there are a massive number of people to testify today, and just scrolling through, most of the people it lists that they oppose the bill, and then there's some people on the list where it doesn't list whether they oppose or whether they're for.
All right. It's 5 after, so I'm going to call to order the Judiciary Committee meeting for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have a strict 3-minute clock. Doesn't mean you need to take all 3 minutes, but at 3 minutes, the bell will sound, and if you've not concluded, we will cut you off at that point.
Thank you for posting
members
that,
will have an
DJ.
opportunity to ask questions if they have any. I would again reiterate and reaffirm, please do not come up here and just read your written testimony, particularly if it's 3 pages long. And you've already submitted it. We have that in front of us on our laptops.
Okay, hell, I didn't realize that, D.
Feel free to sign, feel free to address questions that have been previously asked, etc., but there's no need to read testimony to us.
Their testimony.
We don't allow sort of swapping. If for some reason you're not in the room when your name is called, we will get to you at the end. And with that, good morning. We'll get started. First name I have on my list is Barbara Patrick.
Morning.
Good morning.
Distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee, good morning. My name is Barbara Patrick. I live in Newtown, Connecticut, and I'm a board member for Connecticut Against Gun Violence. I'm testifying in support of Bill HB 742, an act concerning implementation of the Firearm Industry Responsibility Act. First, I'd just briefly like to share with you why this is important to me. On December 14th, 2012, my 3 precious children, who are now thankfully young adults, attended 3 separate schools in Newtown, Connecticut. The high school, the middle school, and another elementary school that was not St. Hook. For an hour that morning after receiving a call about a...
Come on, connection, for the love of Christ.
This was occurring. And I and all of my peers aged a decade or 2 in that hour. It goes without saying there's no way to adequately describe the devastation of that day on our lives that continues to this day. When I read about have more litigation against the gun industry, in general, I am not in favor of more litigation for litigation's sake. I do believe that the bill incentivizes gun manufacturers to act in the safest way possible to produce, market, and sell their products that happen to be extremely dangerous if misused. More dangerous than, for example, red dye number 3 might say, which was just banned from the use of food in the FDA. It strikes me as common sense to promote accountability in this industry as we do with other US industries, but actually also as we do culturally at the core of our American values and standards. You'll recall that George Washington couldn't tell a lie when he cut down the cherry tree. And while this might be a silly example of something that's only lore, it does represent a cornerstone tradition of American accountability. How about required product recalls? Just last week, I was at my car dealership for 90 minutes, getting 2 bolts in my trunk replaced that might be faulty. And the car manufacturer was legally required to inform me of so. I'm also thinking about corporate governance in the form of boards of directors whose purpose is to provide oversight of management and protect shareholder interests. And also, don't many companies also have anonymous whistleblower hotlines where employees can report ethical violations? I'm also aware that various American industry self-regulatory organizations exist to keep consumers safe and protected. I'm thinking, for example, of FINRA, which stands for the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority that regulates the securities industry. In summary, I believe that accountability is a valued, pervasive, and
Thank you, ma'am.
Well, she loves her some
I
government,
know
doesn't she?
and I apologize to folks who are testifying remotely. I don't think the bell can really be heard. So
oh no, I didn't hear the bell.
yeah, no.
Thank you.
For those who are testifying later, I know it's hard to hear it, so that's why we jump in on you. Is there questions or comments from the committee? Questions or comments, Rep. Fishman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ma'am. You had mentioned that we regulate other industries in a similar manner. Can you give me an example of that?
You know, I'm not an expert on that, and I know that there are experts who are going to be testifying after me about points like that. So I just simply wanted to testify about my support of the accountability of that
Why'd you
industry.
bring it up then?
No, I understand, and I'm just testing the veracity of the representations that you've made to us, because I'm not aware of any industry that is treated in this fashion. So I mean, I'm here sometimes to be educated, and just I take it that you're unable to point me to any industry that's
Brooke, is one of your reps
regulated
on
in
the
this
judiciary?
Is that correct?
In which fashion specifically?
The fashion that you've come here in support of 7042, you said that we should support it because we regulate other industries in this fashion, and I'm just trying to.
It does seem like other industries and products have consumer protections in place.
Okay, the examples, FINRA is, I believe FINRA is not regulated by the government. That is like self-regulation, right? The legislation that's before us takes it away from that. Certainly when an automobile accident happens on the highway, no state in this country allows the manufacturer, unless there's a product liability issue, but a mere a drunk driving accident, let's say, we don't sue the manufacturer or the seller of the car. And that's sort of what we're dealing with here. But I thank you for coming here today and offering your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions or comments from the committee? Further questions or comments? Seeing none, thanks for being with us. Earl Bloodworth.
Start after I say good morning to you guys, or does it?
I don't know. I guess so. Yeah.
That's when it's just checking. Okay, so good morning, honorable members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Earl Bloodworth, and I serve as the Executive Director of Connecticut Against Gun Violence. I am testifying in strong support of HB 7042, an act concerning implementation of the Firearm Industry Responsibility Act. I will provide written testimony in support of HB 7137 and in opposition to SB 1441, HB 7070, and HB 7194. Gun violence is a crisis that devastates families and communities across our state. It is a public health emergency. And like any public health crisis, prevention must be at the center of our approach. This legislation is about deterrence and prevention, ensuring that bad actors in the firearm industry cannot operate with impunity, and that the cost of negligence and misconduct is borne by those responsible, not by the victims and not by their families. Currently, there is an accountability gap when it comes to firearms. Unlike virtually every other industry, firearm manufacturers and dealers operate under a unique shield of federal protection that makes it exceptionally difficult to hold bad faith actors in the firearm industry responsible when their reckless practices contribute to crime, violence, and death. This has created a perverse incentive.
Are not
Bad
showing
faith
up on the
actors in the
YouTube
industry
side,
face
but
no
they are
meaningful
showing
consequences
up
for cutting corners,
on the
engaging in
StreamYard.
irresponsible marketing, or failing to implement basic safeguards that can prevent illegal gun trafficking and mass shootings. We know that just 5% of firearm dealers are responsible for up to 90% of firearm crimes. Many of these life-destroying weapons flow into our communities through straw purchases and illegal trafficking. If auto manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, or any other industry allowed their products to be so recklessly diverted into illegal markets, they would be held accountable. But today, in Connecticut, the firearm industry largely escapes scrutiny. This must change. This legislation does not target responsible gun owners. I repeat,
You don't think
this
cars
legislation
are
does
used
not
illegally,
target
you
responsible gun
jackass?
owners or responsible businesses. It sets clear, enforceable deterrence measures for those in the firearm industry who fail to implement basic safeguards, who knowingly supply traffickers, and who profit from products designed to evade the law, such as ghost guns. This is why 9 other states have passed similar legislation and courts have upheld these laws. This bill is necessary. It's a necessary step toward making sure that firearm industry follows the same basic standards of responsibility that we demand from any other sector in the state of Connecticut. In Connecticut, we have led the nation in common sense gun laws. We have saved lives. In Connecticut, this is about a path to justice, and it is about saving lives, but ultimately is about prevention. They say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I will take saving lives via preventative measures over lawsuit wins from loss of lives any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I urge you to pass this legislation and send a clear message. If you profit from firearms, you also bear responsibility for ensuring they do not end up in the wrong hands. Thank you. I am happy to take on any questions.
Questions from the committee, Rep. Fishman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good. I'm really good this morning.
I'm well as well. Thank you.
Good. What happens when government makes the mistake? I recently had a case where the government screwed up on the background check and they allowed a convicted felon to acquire a firearm. He didn't do anything bad with that, but certainly we don't want that to happen, right?
Certainly.
And it appears the law that's before us is silent as to that situation. So what would you have happen when the government screws up?
So I will try to answer your question,
Dagger
but if I
Riser, good
cannot
morning, my brother.
thoroughly answer, I will defer to some of the experts that'll be testifying behind me. But when you say the government messed up, was this the government messing up with a resident that shouldn't have a gun in the state of Connecticut? Because this law specifically focused on the state of Connecticut.
Yes, but
are you talking federally somewhere else, or are you talking Connecticut specifically?
We
this law is about Connecticut specifically.
Yes, but in order to acquire a firearm in Connecticut, you need a national background check.
Okay.
You know that, right? So that would come into play here. And in that particular case, the gentleman had a conviction out of Chicago in 1968. It was deemed to be a felony. Connecticut screwed up and they didn't pick it up.
Connecticut screwed up, or the feds screwed up?
Connecticut screwed it up when they interpreted the Chicago criminal record.
Okay.
Okay. So what would you have happen in that situation?
Well, I would ask a couple of questions. And again, this is me being a layman's terms, not a lawyer or attorney in any facet. One, I would say, was there a crime committed with the firearm that was produced for the person who should not have had it in the first place? And then secondly, whatever gap is what this law is trying to fill in, some gaps where there's no ability, and we should figure out where that gap was, whoever, and fill that gap.
Well, I don't see a gap, but
if somebody got through the background checks and it wasn't checked properly, that's a gap.
So, but the liability in that particular situation under this legislation would fall on the gun store that called SLFU, got a transfer authorization number, all of those things. You know, the gentleman standing in front of them has a permit to acquire a firearm, you know, so they've been through the system, the government system, but the liability would fall on the gun store under this legislation.
Yeah, well, I'm not an expert on liability, but to me, there appears to be a gap. But I do have some folks behind me that could very more thoroughly answer that question.
Okay. Now, I think, and I sorry, I had to
This
step
is
out
just
for a
a
moment.
way to bleed gun stores dry and put them out of
industries.
business with
Can you
frivolous
give me an
lawsuits.
example of another industry that
Same way
falls
with a lot
under
of
the
these
purview
bills.
of such similar legislation?
Off the top of my head, and I mentioned in my testimony, I believe there was an industry that promoted and marketed cigarettes toward young folks, and that has been since stopped. and they were held accountable, and there were rules and laws put in place for that. You no longer have and I
But
might
if
be
you
dating
use
myself a little bit,
cigarettes
but you
as
no longer have
directed,
those
they're
big
harmful to
giant
your health.
cigarette
If
machines
you
that you
use a
just go
gun
in
as
like a pool
directed,
hall
it's not
somewhere
harmful to your
and
health.
purchase cigarettes. So that was a regulation that was put into place based on some irresponsible marketing by a company in a different sector. Or
Okay,
you can talk about opioids, which is a case that's still ongoing. Again,
Sure.
this is me from layman's person, just watching the news and reading stuff.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure, so if we take those two examples, cigarettes, believe it or not, I used to smoke 3 packs a day.
Oh, used to.
Yeah.
Congratulations on
I
stopping.
Quit in 1997.
Wonderful.
I don't believe that the system is such in Connecticut that if I got lung cancer, that I could sue Marlboro.
I'm still working on quitting.
No, that is not the case why those cases were brought to my understanding, though. But again, when I said about the cigarette companies, it was around marketing. So just like alcohol, if you go into a package store and knowingly, and there's somebody's underage and they're purchasing it, you bear that responsibility to check their ID, correct?
Sure. I'm
Okay.
I'm trying to put the two together with
Right,
this
right,
legislation.
right. So
this
if
legislation
you can
doesn't-
be
It
shut
was
down.
Joe Camel's fault.
Guys, I gotta jump
That
in.
dirty
All right,
Joe
so
Camel.
we gotta have a record, we gotta have a transcript. So we need a question. When the question's finished, then we can start our answer. When our answer's finished, then we can start our question.
Sure.
So Representative Fishbein, you have the floor. Why don't we try asking a question and then let the witness respond to it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
You were talking about the marketing aspect of the legislation that's before us.
Yes, sir.
Right.
DJ,
And
do
I
you got
believe
anything
this
dropping
has
in
to
your
do
state or getting
with
pushed through in your state?
marketing in an unlawful way. Is that a fair characterization?
It could be unlawful, unscrupulous, unintentional even, but nonetheless, if it's impacting somebody negatively who it shouldn't be, then, I believe they try to rectify that.
Okay. So,
Hey, did Joe Camel run with corn pop?
gun manufacturer that has a picture of a firearm, the caliber, how many rounds the magazine contains, puts an ad in the magazine, a individual goes to a gun store, purchases after seeing the ad, and then and purchase it obviously legally, gone through the criminal background checks, all of that stuff, and then uses that firearm in a bad manner. Under this legislation, the advertiser would have liability.
I don't believe that the legislation actually states that, but again, I'm not an expert or a lawyer, so I would defer that to some of the experts that'll be coming after me. So
Okay.
Have a good
what
day at
about
work.
the
Too
gun
many
store in that
choices.
particular situation?
defer to the experts as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the question,
Four
sir.
bills here in
Anything
Nebraska.
else?
Anybody else?
Questions?
Representative Howard.
Thank you. Good morning, sir.
We'll have to look it up one day, DJ. Have to look through them.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You said that there was 9 other states that enacted legislation under 7042 already. Did you say 9?
Similar.
Or similar? Yeah, right.
Yes.
Similar.
Mhm.
Of those 9 states, what does their
I think Muffin Top's up in
look like?
Nebraska too, isn't he?
well, you must know the process in Connecticut to purchase firearms and ammunition, I would assume.
Correct. I actually did apply for a permit myself.
Okay, so the state of Connecticut, as you know, you can't buy a bullet in this state legally unless you have a fingerprint supported background check. We're in agreement about that.
Yes, sir.
So of those,
That I am not aware of, sir. I'm not. They allow the purchase of firearms. Every state, as you know, is very, very different.
I do recognize it. And that's sort of what I'm drilling down at. So because I think in Connecticut, I look at this legislation, I've read it carefully. I read some of the testimony already. I look forward to hearing more of it today. But what I'm driving at is in the state of Connecticut, we have what I believe is the most robust background check to purchase firearms in the country. So to say, well, 9 other states have passed similar legislation, but they don't have the robust foundation framework that we do, may not be a fair comparison. Would you agree with that?
I probably to what you state is our robustness, but I don't. So I would defer that to our experts that may be coming after me.
Okay, well, turning to Connecticut, are you aware of any gun owner, retailer or manufacturer who has been charged, prosecuted, or investigated in this state?
I do not, sir.
Okay, because that's the next sort of point about this is, you know, in your dialogue with Representative Fishbein, it seems to understand to me that what you're trying to do and your concept here, or what you're proposing or pushing for, is accountability, right? So that if I'm a gun owner and Representative Fishbein walks in and says, I want a gun, and I just sell it to him without checking it, see if he has a permit, without calling for an authorization number, that I should be held accountable. Is that basically what you're looking for?
To a certain extent, reading through.
What's the makeup of your legislature up
but
there, DJ? Is it
also
pretty Republican
using some
heavy, or
common
is it pretty
sense.
Democrat
If I
heavy? Is it
were
kind of in the
a
middle?
gun store owner or firearms owner, and you come in, you know, might make me a little curious. And I think that's the kind of aspect we're just asking folks to do due diligence. I also said this is more a prevention than deterrence, as opposed to allowing somebody to have an avenue just to sue frivolously.
I didn't see anything.
Owners of gun shop.
Excuse me, gun shop owners.
Okay.
Thank you. Gun shop owners to report. Is that your understanding of legislation, that would require them to report suspicious purchases like that?
I didn't necessarily say report, but do their due diligence. Why somebody will be purchasing 100 or 200 guns?
What is their due diligence?
As this person purchasing 200 guns?
So it's your position that if I'm a gun shop owner and you come in to purchase things, I should conduct my own investigation as to what and why you're doing that?
I believe you should do some due diligence. That's my own personal belief, but whether the legality of that, I don't know. So again, I defer that to our experts that will be forthcoming.
Okay, jumping forward, you talked about in your dialogue with Rep. Fishbein, you kept using the word gap. So he articulated to you a scenario where
Gun shops
somebody
refuse
applied for a
purchases
certificate or
all the
permit,
time.
and the state authorities conducting that background check missed a disqualifying conviction, and you called that a gap. So is it your testimony that there's a gap in the law when somebody fails to properly enforce it? Because that's what happened there, right? So if I'm in charge of background checks, which I was in charge of background checks and pistol permits for a long time, and I miss a conviction, is that a gap in the law, or is that a failure on my part?
Based on how you presented, I would say that was a failure on your part. But again, the legalities of that, or whether that's a gap that this particular bill that we're pushing for is covering, I would defer that to the experts that will be forthcoming.
And then my last sort of follow-up to your dialogue with Rep. Fishbein is you used an analogy that we did away with the vending machines for cigarettes because there's no way to prove how old these kids are, or I guess people, but focused on children buying them, right?
Sure.
I think in most states, on gun, you can
there's
have
nowhere in Connecticut
many
where you can legally
guns on a
purchase a
single
firearm
background
without
check.
presenting documentation to prove that you have a fingerprint supported background check proving that you have no disqualifying criteria. Would you agree with me about that?
I would agree with you about that.
So how is that analogy making sense? Like, I mean, it seems to me that's a pretty unfair stretch of an analogy to say, okay, it's the same as a kid walking in and buying something out of a vending machine is the same as walking in and buying a firearm when you've already gone through a rigorous process. Do you really think that's a fair analogy?
My analogy wasn't about the fairness of the situation. My analogy was to answer the representative's question regarding what other industry had issues that were addressed by legislation.
So one of my concerns on this bill is most of the requirements, what would seem to be requirements in this bill to prevent firearms ending up in the wrong hands, right? That would seem to be the impetus of the bill is to discourage illegal transfers of firearms, et cetera, and firearm accessories, which, you know, we could drill down on that forever. I don't even know what that means. You know, to me, a firearm accessory, I carry firearms. I have red dot sights. I have flashlights on them. I have stickers on them. I have batteries in the flashlights. I mean, are these all firearm accessories, do you think?
Scope, sights, and what else did you say? Holster?
Flashlight?
Flashlight? Possibly. I'm not a gun expert either, sir.
Holsters would be a firearm accessory, like sold on Amazon.
But there are also accessories to make
Yeah, obviously you're not a
semi-automatic.
firearms expert, dude.
Is that also not true?
The handy
What
gun
are those?
side is dead.
Accessories you can buy to enhance the firearm that you have, which I believe is illegal in the state.
So those are firearm conversion kit.
Oh, those are conversion kits.
Sure.
Those wouldn't be considered accessories.
Okay, thank you for that. And then going back to my question here, it seems to me that this legislation is aimed at preventing those sort of, illegal sales for safety reasons, and that seems to be your testimony.
Correct.
I would submit this to you, and I'd like for what CAGV in your position as executive director's response to this would be. I would suggest to you that the laws that we currently have on the books already prevent those sort of illegal sales, straw purchases, illegal transfers of firearms, et cetera. We have a law on the books now, the number of handguns somebody can buy in a month. We have all of those laws existing. I would submit to you that this piece of legislation is aimed at driving up the cost of insurance, driving up the cost of doing business for firearm manufacturers to run them out of this state. And I would let you know that I have an OFA estimate that last year alone, $5 million in revenue came from firearms dealers in this state in sales tax alone. That doesn't include jobs, real estate taxes for their shops. That doesn't include income taxes for themselves, their businesses, and their employees. I would submit to you that this legislation is aimed at running those businesses out of this state and driving up their insurance costs because everything else is already addressed in statute. What is your response to my concern there?
That could possibly be a very valid concern, sir. But again, I believe it's hypothetical. And to get more into the weeds of your concern, you'd probably be better off talking to some of the experts that'll be forthcoming after.
Well, I look forward to it. I have education, public hearing, and a screening meeting today too. I'll be bouncing back and forth, but hopefully I can engage with enough folks to try to get that concern addressed. I thank you so much for being here, and I thank for you, and I mean this sincerely. I thank you for the work that you do with CAGV. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr.
For the
Chairman.
work that you do as well.
Further questions or comments? Representative DiCaprio online.
And thank you for being here this morning. You mentioned about statistics about percentages of dealers that are, I believe you said 5% are concerning. Can you just elaborate on that point, please?
Yeah, there's a statistic from Brady, the Brady Foundation. You can go on the website and it clearly states that roughly 90% of the illegal firearms are roughly from about 5% of gun dealers or firearm dealers that act unscrupulously and do not act or comport within the confines of the laws in various states, and how they sell or help in trafficking firearms to people that should not have them. And I'll be happy to provide the body, the committee, the link to that information directly.
I was going to ask that if that information was available. Do you know off the top of your head, where Connecticut stands with that?
I do not know the number specifically. I mean, if you're talking about hypothetically, say we have 100 firearm dealers, you're talking about 5% that may be contributing to guns that make it into our communities illegally or illicitly.
It's a national statistic. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. That was a national statistic.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions or comments? Representative Fishbein for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, you were talking about those conversion kits, right? That make a semi-automatic into a fully automatic firearm. Are you aware if those are sold anywhere in Connecticut legally?
I do not believe that they are, but please don't quote me on that. Again, I would defer to the experts, but I believe they're not allowed in the state of Connecticut based on some of the laws that we have already put on the books as far as what type of guns folks can have, residents can have in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, thank you for
They would
that.
have to be ordered online.
Well, I think you're accurate. Well, they can't be ordered online, but
Mhm.
the 200 gun scenario.
Mhm.
So are you aware that every transfer of a firearm in Connecticut has to be approved by the state police? Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So your 200 gun scenario, it would be true that the state police would have to approve those 200 transfers, right?
Yes, sir.
And what would stop the state police from, in their due diligence, raising a question, perhaps looking into, doing an investigation of that individual? Is there anything that would stop that?
From my mouth to God ears, I would hope nothing would stop that.
Well, because that's, I know that that has happened, and
Mhm.
we do read about what are known as straw purchases,
Correct.
and sometimes that's a way that those are determined. But as Representative Howard did talk about, last year, I believe it was, we did put in a law about the number of handguns that one can purchase, and you can't purchase 200 handguns, even in a month. So I appreciate you coming here today and the exchange. So
I appreciate the exchange as well, sir. Thank you for your
Mr. Chairman.
time.
Further questions or comments? If not, good seeing you. Earl.
Thank you. Everyone be blessed.
Next up will be Tom Maloney.
There's Winfield, Staffstrom, esteemed members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm Tom Maloney. I'm from North Stonington. I'm with CCDO as the research coordinator. I'd like to state my support for HB 7070, duty to retreat. We've seen a number of examples like Stephen Williford in the Sutherland Springs church attack and Jack Wilson in the White Settlement church shooting. In both cases, they did the exact opposite of retreating. And in both cases, the killing of innocents ended when they engaged the attack. A house of worship is not like being caught in a robbery at a convenience store. The perpetrator is there for the purpose of harming as many people as possible. Anyone in a position to stop that killing should be able to legally do so. I also support HB 7194, the magazine and assault weapons transfer bill. This is just common sense. It yields net zero to the possession of these items. It specifies both must be able to legally possess them. So having them transfer between them serves no public safety benefit. I oppose Section 4 of HB 7137. This is an anti-gun community trying to weaponize financial institutions and debank firearms retailers. This is a violation of gun owners' privacy, as these institutions would be forced to gather personal data on gun owners, as well as provide a potential financial chokehold on the retailers. And finally, big one for today, obviously, HB 7042. Despite the fear mongering of those that support this bill, the reality is that the firearms industry is probably the most regulated of any retail industry. As we've already heard testimony today, the background checks, et cetera, ATF inspections unannounced, et cetera. This bill really amounts to simply lawfare, plain and simple. It's an attempt to potentially financially ruin retailers, and Representative Howard, I think, made perfect point of that, and have the follow law as set forth by ATF as well as Connecticut law. Connecticut, I believe, is the only state that requires both a Connecticut and a NICS check. These retailers are already doing the best they can. They're following Connecticut and federal law. And the reality is they're also the front line of being able to alert potential straw buyers. And ATF often receives a flag from dealers when they feel it might be suspicious and it could be a straw purchaser. So driving legal dealers out of business is certainly going to just continue to push these dealers out of business. And
Thank you. Question, Senator Kissel.
Thank you very much, Chairman Staffstrom. Thank you so much for coming out to testify this morning, and admire your organization, the Connecticut Defense League, Constitutional Defense League. I've often, when I've gone and debated this issue, and I have constituents that take both sides regarding gun regulation and further gun laws. And it's a natural thing for a lot of people when they see these terrible acts that take place across the country. But certainly we have a Second Amendment right, and it's a right that has to be protected. I've often stated that I think that Connecticut is, if not the most heavily regulated state regarding gun control in the nation, that we're certainly in the top three with maybe Illinois and California. What would, given your expertise, what would be your assessment of where Connecticut stands as far as gun regulations and protections, even though we have a Second Amendment right? That
I
sometimes
would
people
agree.
forget?
We're easily in the top three. We might be better in one area, worse in another. It's pretty robust. And as somebody who's been involved in CCDL and the advocacy for quite some time, I find it frustrating to see the amount of duress put on legal gun owners trying to stay legal, trying to follow. I've seen people melt down in arguments about how to obey the law. And that's not where the win in public safety is, going after the same group over and over. We keep piling on more and more of these laws on the people that are already trying to obey the law.
I appreciate that, because I certainly agree with you that we're definitely in the top three.
Lawfully,
And,
what's up?
no
Good
one's gonna
morning, my
say
brother.
that California or Illinois are necessarily super right-wing states or anything like that. Certainly when it comes to gun control. And you look at Chicago, with all the gun control in Illinois, it doesn't do a heap of good for Chicago. That being said, we did pass a law, I think it was either last year or the year before. I think it was the year before. Embedded in that, and by the way, I voted no, because I think we have enough gun laws on the books.
Gun
already.
control never
But
stops
embedded in there
crimes. It
was a
just
provision
turns
where there would
law-abiding
be
gun
a
owners
longer
into criminals.
detainment for suspects arrested for a gun crime that had a history of gun violence, because it seems to be a small coterie of bad actors are the ones that are the major generators of gun violence. And in speaking with, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but Judge Gold, as to where we stood in the implementation of that law, he said it was making a major impact in gun violence in the urban areas. So I think that small part of that bill, by targeting those bad actors who have a history of gun violence, is the direction to go, as opposed to layering all these proposals on the law-abiding citizens.
Yeah, just making murder illegal ought to
Thank you for
solve
coming and
everything.
testifying this morning. Thank you, Chairman Stafford.
Thank you.
It's like
For
making
the
drugs
questions or
illegal. We haven't had a problem with drugs
Just quickly, sir, I know you were running
in
through these.
decades.
On 7137, sections 1 through 3 of that bill talk about if someone is prohibited from purchasing a firearm in Connecticut because of a conviction in another state that's similar to Connecticut. So take the example of, somebody right now, if you're convicted of a domestic violence, certain domestic violence offenses in Connecticut, you're prohibited from purchasing a firearm.
Of course.
But under current law, if you're convicted of that same offense in California or Illinois, for example, and then you apply for a permit in Connecticut, you could get your permit. So we actually unfairly treat Connecticut residents more harshly than we do residents of other states. I didn't hear you mention those 3 sections of that bill necessarily. Are you opposed to those? Or are you okay?
I'm not opposed to those.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion. I'm not expressing an opinion on CCDL. I believe we did not take any position on sections 1 through 3. Our legislative coordinator is coming up later. He's best to codify that. I personally saw no problem with those. They seem to make sense. And in my testimony, I did specify it was section 4 that I had.
I noticed that, and that's why I just wanted to highlight sections 1 through 3 and just make sure we were clear. Because I mean, just to me, it seems, I know we banter about the words common sense around here on gun day all the time, but it does seem like, why are we treating our own residents sort of more harshly than we are somebody out of state. That if you're convicted of a similar offense out of state,
Damien, good morning, brother man. How are you?
purchasing a firearm and passing a
Hopefully
background
you're
check in
doing well.
Connecticut, then same should apply.
I would classify that as a legitimate gap.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank
Next up will be Peter Estrada.
Good morning to all the members of the committee. My name is Peter Shutter Jr.
Yeah, man, I'm
I'm
living the
here today
dream
to
as
ask
always.
everyone to vote in favor of HB 7070, an act concerning the duty to retreat in a house of religious worship. One of the reasons I would like this law to pass is because I think about what might happen while I am at church. One of the first things I do when I arrive at church is I go to say hello to my friends. I then find my way to my seat with my mom and my sister. After worship is done, I then go to the kids' classroom for a lesson. I wonder what were to happen if while I was in class and a bad guy was going into the area my mother is at and saying things like, "I'm going to hit someone." The law states that if there is an exit, you
No
must take
doubt,
it to get
Damien.
out
They,
safely.
man,
But I'm pretty sure
they're
no
gonna
parent
beat
would
this
want to
horse
leave
to
their child
death,
behind while there's a dangerous person
even
trying
though
to
it's
hit them.
already dead.
I know my parents would not want to leave me alone while there's a dangerous person in the building that I am in. My mother now has to go to the back to the classroom to get me, but now she has to go through the bad guy and possibly fight him to get to me in the other room. The main reason I would want this law to change is because I do not want my mom to get in trouble with the law for fighting the bad guy, because the law says she was supposed to run away while it was safe. So please vote yes to pass HB 7070. I want to thank everyone for your time and have a great day.
Thank you. Great job. Senator Kissel.
Thank you very much, Chairman Staffstrom. Peter, great job, man. You got right up there. You didn't hesitate. You pulled the mic down, made sure it was on. I mean, if we could just like give that tidbit of information to everybody else in the room, we'd be in great
Thank you.
shape. And also, I really appreciate your testimony because it raised an issue that I hadn't really thought of, right? So we have debates regarding the right to retreat in various areas. Sometimes, people don't want to retreat even from their home. It's like the castle doctrine. That's a whole different thing. But you said like a place of religious service is a unique area. And I was sort of wondering, like, why are we carving out religious places? And you raised a really good point. It's a place where families go. Doesn't matter whether you're Muslim, Jewish. I have people that I know that are uh, from Vietnam, that Buddhists, but they go to temple or however you want to call their place of worship, and it's usually as a family. And it doesn't have to be like a nuclear family, but it could be like a parent and their child. It could be grandparents and the children. But you're saying it's that kind of environment. And in that kind of environment, especially if people aren't like always all together, maybe in different rooms, different parts of the building, if there is under our law a forcing people to retreat, I now, based on your testimony today, have for the first time thought no parent, because I'm a dad, I have two sons, they're much older now than you are, but no parent's going to want to take off out of that building without knowing if their child is safe. It's just programmed into probably over 90% of moms and dads' DNA. You're going to want to at least see
Dude, if
them
I'm going to
and
church
make
these
sure they're
days,
in a
you're
safe
damn right I'm
spot.
carrying.
And if you can do anything in your human power to make sure that they're safely out of that building, you're going to do that. And that means you're not going to run away. You're not going to leave. And so the law is compelling people to do something that they're not hardwired to do based upon nature. And I hadn't really thought of that. And I really appreciate your testimony this morning. And I want to say thank you. Thank you, Chairman Stafford.
Thank you. Representative Fishman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, thank you, Peter, for coming here today. You certainly put a different light on our laws. And when you get a second, when you get off, if I can talk to you outside. It would be great. Thank you.
Senator Winfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just want to add to the chorus of good jobs. I might have an opinion that differs from yours, but it's always a good thing to see young folks who come here. You really did do a good job. The first time I ever testified didn't go so smoothly. So good job. And I think I saw that Dad is on the list further down. So good job, Dad, in helping to make this happen. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? If not, good job. Thanks for being with us.
Thank
Christina Quaranta. Christina Quaranta with us? If not, Marty Isaac.
This is Marty Isaac. I'm sorry, I'm driving right now. Is it possible I can have 5 minutes so I can pull over safely to testify?
You know, Marty, we'll get you at the end, okay? Brooke Cheney.
Sister Brooks up. Come on, connection. You better hold.
No worries. Take your time.
Oh, look at her walking up on her knee.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. All right. Is it on? It's on. Good morning, my brothers and sisters. And why do I say that? Because the first thing I want you all to realize that we are brothers and sisters. We all bleed red. I have the coolest job in the world. I work with people from all walks of life. I work with CEOs, CFOs, engineers, teachers, paramedics, doctors, nurses, carpenters, movie and TV series producers, authors, stay-at-home moms, grandmas. Imagine any kind of job, and chances are I've had them in my classroom. These people are your friends, your family, and neighbors. These are the people you continue to punish and malign with each and every new regulation around firearms. As a gun owner and instructor here in Connecticut, each year I warn my students, it's near impossible to be a law-abiding gun owner. I then let them know that I'm a peace-loving, non-violent person who owns a gun. However, even with my involvement in these halls, I have a hard time keeping up with them all because they keep changing. Each law starts with good intentions. Let's save someone's life. Unfortunately, not one of them seems to actually pay attention to the decades of research that is out there on how to effectively do this. As a victim of rape in my 7th grade class, I know that they didn't care about any laws. No gun regulation would have stopped them. Violence is not an object. Violence was not created by the knife that was held to my throat. Violence was the boys who were doing the attacking. We need to stop blaming the inanimate object that people use while committing acts of violence. Instead, we should be talking about the human condition that leads people to do awful things. We can't stop it all, but we have to try harder to actually focus on the real problem. In 2012, when Sandy Hook occurred, my children were 5 and 6, 4 and 5 actually. I cried for weeks before I decided to figure out what actually helped violence, because I know that's a reason why many of us are in this room, whether we are for or against these bills. I found oodles of information out there. The CDC simply states, first, we must define and monitor the problem. Then we identify the risk and protective factors, develop and test prevention strategies, and assure widespread adoption. Time and time again, we have. So I am absolutely here to say that I oppose 742 as making other people liable for the violence of bad people and the bad actors does nothing to help prevent violence. It is only punitive. As my friend Tom, I am opposing Section 4 of 7137 and in support of 7194. I wish supporting this bill would stop being mad and angry and wishing punishment on others versus actually helping prevent violence long before someone has a gun in their hands. The crisis that we have in America is a mental health crisis. 2 out of every 3 gun deaths are suicide.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Senator Kissel.
Thank you very much, Chairman Staffstrom. I just want to say that having suffered what you went through when you were in 7th grade, you're remarkably upbeat and cheerful as you come to testify today. And that takes a real lot, because I've been doing this for a number of years, and not everybody can shake that off. And I understand that. I mean, it's hugely traumatic. And yet somehow you've turned it into a positive. And I just want to thank you for your position that you've taken today, because that's the one that I generally share. I'm always open to new ideas. And that's why I'm listening and every speaker. But thank you for testifying.
Thank you, Senator.
Good
Bissell.
questions or comments? Comments? If not, thanks for being with us.
Thank
Good luck.
you.
Good luck with that knee recovery.
Thank you.
Morning, brother Flying Rich.
Wa-
You home safe and sound already?
Oh,
Are you still on the
it's
road?
okay. Walt Cupson.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, sir.
Great job,
I feel
Brooke.
better, Brooke.
Great
I love
job.
Brooke. She's amazing. So good morning. My name is Dr. Walt Cupson. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. 4 bills in 3 minutes. Okay, so I'd like to vehemently oppose HB 7042. When we talk about firearm accessories, we're talking about holsters. We're talking about rifle slings, scopes, perhaps a duck call, an ammo bag. These are things that anyone can walk into a gun store without a permit and purchase. My wife could go to a gun store and purchase any of these items from the FFL. And to insinuate or to suggest that FFLs are somehow responsible for quote unquote gun violence, I think is incredibly insulting. I know many, many FFLs, and they're some of the most precise, careful, calculated folks who want to absolutely make sure they don't run afoul of the law. And as I think about this bill, I can't help but draw. You'll hear a lot of comparisons with objects being used, and I can't help to think, I can go to a store and buy a kitchen knife, a carving knife. I can go to Harbor Freight and buy a machete, and yet, are we going to hold Harbor Freight or a kitchen store liable if I decide to harm someone with that machete? And there have been mass killings in other countries with machetes. So, and I'm so glad that Senator Kissel he brought up something that I had already been thinking about saying, that I can't believe we haven't learned from previous bill testimonies. I believe it was HB 667 when chiefs of police basically said, you know what? We know who the good bad actors are. We know who they are. Let's concentrate on them. And apparently, we haven't learned that lesson in this body. So, I also wish to stringently oppose 7137 Section 4. The other side will tell you that there are already 3 states that have merchant category codes. I will point out that there are 7 Second Amendment states that have passed legislation making these MCCs illegal. That's so if we're keeping count, we've got 17 states who say it's illegal, you shouldn't have it, and only 3 states, now you're trying for a 4th, that want to push for it. And then finally, I wish to lodge my support for 7070 and for 7194. Again, the shooting in White Settlement, Texas in 2019, 6 seconds, an armed parishioner stopped the attack, and thankfully only 2 parishioners died that day. It could have been so much, much, much worse. So I think I covered it in 3 minutes. I thank you for your attention, and I would certainly entertain any possible questions.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Michelle McBride.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hello, Judicial Committee. Thank you very much for having us here today. My name is Michelle, and I'm a legal gun owner. I also co-own Patriot Wear holsters with my husband. Excuse me. This that is on the table will literally put us out of business with one of a lawsuit. We sell holsters. I don't sell firearms. I sell holsters, I sell belts, and I sell weapon lights and carrying needs. I don't understand how it would be okay for this body to think that prosecuting
Brooke, your
the
opening was
industry
awesome.
for bad actors, as it's been said over and over, we can't control whether you're a gun store, whether you're a manufacturer, it doesn't matter. You can't control who takes that or a firearm and harms someone else. Nowhere in this country, we have regulations. A lot of companies, as they were mentioned, a lot of industries are regulated. None of them are held liable when somebody criminally uses their item or uses it just to harm someone. If you're for whatever case may be, there's already laws on the books. We don't charge those criminals in Connecticut. We are light on crime, but yet you want to hurt the law-abiding, follow the law. I don't understand it at all. It was mentioned, the 200 gun purchase. We're already regulated down to how many guns
All
we
gun
can
laws
buy
do
as far as
more to hurt the
handguns.
law
And
abiding
there's
than they
multiple
do
form both on
anybody.
the federal side and state side that we have as an FFL and to the town, to the state, and to the feds. Those are already in place. And I just don't, we are constantly attacked year after year. I have a clean record. There's nothing on my record. And yet I have to worry every day that I'll be shut down or that I'll be doing something because these laws are so convoluted that will get me in trouble. And I don't understand how that thought process makes sense to anyone. And I'm done.
Thank you. Questions from committee? Seeing none, being with us. Next up will be Thea Alfez. Thea Alfez for this. Okay, how about Jonathan Roy?
That's a good question, DJ. I have no idea.
Good morning to all the distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all today. I am here to oppose HB 7042. I'm a former fire department captain and paramedic. I'm a firearms instructor. I work part-time at a local firearms shop, and I'm a resident of Hartford. There are many things who I am, but I'm no stranger to the tragedies that our citizens face too often at the hands of those who choose to commit immoral, violent acts. For my 22 years of public safety career, I have more horrific memories of tragic situations brought on by the evil actions of others than I care to admit. While working with my students, I've heard horror stories of individuals and families faced with one of the most unthinkable experiences in their lives, only to realize they had no way to defend themselves. As a resident of Hartford, I would love to tell you I always wake up to my alarm clock. But let's be honest, I wake up to gunfire more often than I'll ever admit to my parents. These experiences push me to educate my students. We spend a lot of time talking about situational awareness, avoiding potentially dangerous situations, de-escalation tactics, and escape. But the reality is some victims of violent crimes don't get the opportunity to run away from their attackers before their attackers make them their prey. I know personally how serious staff at firearm shops take their responsibilities. Additionally, in Connecticut, in order to purchase a firearm, we must already be approved by our local police department and the Connecticut State Police for a permit And at the time of purchase, we must get further approval from the state police for that purchase. We also know criminals do
Yeah,
not go
almost
to
won't let
local
you play
firearm
with your
shops to
wife.
obtain their weapons. Establishing a general statute that places a
I'm sure they
financial
would if your
target on
wife
members of
wasn't
the firearms
tranny.
industry will not affect criminals that terrorize our communities. I'm concerned that passing this bill, if that passage of this bill could on many of the family-owned small businesses that make up our local firearm shops throughout the state of Connecticut. If this bill is passed, that potential chilling effect will decrease the resources our citizens have when defending themselves and their loved ones. Criminally violent acts in our communities are unacceptable, but the blame of these actions belongs solely at the feet of those who choose to harm other people. Evil people will do evil things if good people do not stand up to stop them. Rendering a flock of sheep defenseless to the attack of wolves is not a solution that brings about a good outcome. It makes the massacre easier for the wolves. In conclusion, I would like to quote John Locke. We are like chameleons. We take on the hue and color of our moral character from those who are around us. Said another way, we cannot legislate morality. We cannot make
Sam,
what is
what's going
morally
on this
wrong
morning,
so illegal
brother?
that criminals will not choose to commit their horrible acts. This is a truth that humans have known for centuries. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thanks, panelists. Matthew McBrien.
Be right back. Breaking news. Was Crump starting something up? I'll have to check it out later.
Good morning, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Matthew McBrien. I'm the co-owner of Patriot Wear Holsters, LLC. We're a holster manufacturer in Waterbury, Connecticut. I want to talk a little bit about the language in this bill. As a firearm industry member that retails and manufactures industry products, and we're also talking about accessories, how this would potentially affect my business as far as the misuse of a firearm, even if someone was using my product, whether it was unintentional or intentional, this could lead to frivolous lawsuits that could legitimately bankrupt my company overnight. We're a very small business. It's my wife and I and one part-time employee. I'd also like to talk about possibly, and should a lawsuit come through against the company, it could affect the ability of my company to obtain insurance after the fact if we are not dropped by an insurance company. To also, we have involved with law enforcement departments that we supply for off-duty or admin holsters and accessories. So I just think the language of this bill needs, if nothing else, reworded, reworked, or just done away with completely. Thank you for listening. And I'm in opposition
For the record, appreciate your testimony. Seeing no questions, appreciate being here. Christopher DeBella.
There you go. You gotta pop up. There we go. Good morning, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Chris DeBella. I'm an 07 FFL in Connecticut. I own Tobacco Valley Guns in East Windsor. And I, of course, oppose HB 7042, support 7070, oppose HB 7137, and support HB 4. Pretty much every year, you guys probably see me enough as it is, going through all the bills and everything else. Been in the industry for 17 years. And obviously this new bill right now, of course, hurts me as an industry. Obviously, if I can't be held legally liable and civilly liable for the actions of people that I sell to, our store, for example, we have plenty of things in place to prevent people from doing things illegally. We have federal and state laws that we follow. And being civilly liable for something that I sell isn't fair to anyone in the industry. And what this law is right here too, if I sell something and then it gets resold again, does that still come back to me as an industry person? I mean, we follow every state law to a T. We work closely with ATF. Even as of recently, we've had police departments call us because of all the laws that CT has put in place to figure out what's legal and what's not. And of course, we work with them very closely. The other thing, to some of the senators and to some of the other members that were speaking earlier, ghost guns in Connecticut are already illegal. That law was passed several years ago. There's no FFLs that I know of in CT that are engaged in anything to do with ghost guns. One of the senators brought up earlier about domestic violence. The Form 4473, which is given to us by the ATF, every firearm sale we do has that form. And in question J, it says, have you ever been convicted in a court of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence? Or have you ever been a member of the military and have been convicted of a crime that included as an element of the use of force against a person as identified in the instructions? If they answer yes to that, automatically we have to shut down the sale by law, and the NICS won't go through anyway. So even the state check would flag that. So we already have domestic violence as a thing that bars you from owning a firearm federally, and it passes right into the state as well. So, and also the other conversation earlier I heard too was on people buying and selling machine guns and stuff like that. You can't buy and alter guns to be full auto legally. Can people do it? Sure. But no gun store sells parts in Connecticut to make guns, machine guns. That does not happen. We are in such a regulated industry, and being in Connecticut, we follow those laws very, very, very scrupulously. And that federally, we would be held liable too if we were manufacturing or allowing people to manufacture machine guns. Just to kind of go through some of the stuff with the anti-gun people, just to kind of give them a little bit of education what it's like in industry.
Even once I got to get out of here in a little bit and go to work, I'm going to crank this back up once I get to work and continue to stream this, because I'm going to be listening to it all day anyway. So I might as well listen to it with a chat where we can shoot the breeze. And
Good morning to the committee. My name is Matthew Fleischer. I'm from Niantic, Connecticut. I am one of the owners of Ron's Guns in East Lyme, Connecticut, and I am in opposition of 7042. What I want to explain a little bit, I had a conversation with some people that were sitting next to me here that I don't think fully understand the process of buying a gun in the state of Connecticut. So when somebody comes into our shop and even wants to look at a gun, they need to have proof that they have a Connecticut pistol permit. So they've got to show the permit. And then when they want to purchase the gun, again, they have to supply proof that they have a driver's license and a pistol permit. And now before we can sell them the gun, they've got to fill out a lot of government documentation. As that documentation is being filled out, we reach out to the state of Connecticut, sometimes through the internet or sometimes through a phone call if the internet is down. And that is called a NICS check. So they cannot buy that gun, even though they have a pistol permit in the state of Connecticut, until they are approved by the state. So it's a double check. So for this law to hold me liable for something that somebody does with that gun after the state of Connecticut's checked, the government is checked, and then it comes back to us, I don't understand that process. So again, I'm in opposition of it. And one of the other things that Representative Howard talked about is the finances. So if this law gets passed, we will probably no longer be able to get insurance in the state of Connecticut. So therefore, you're going to put potentially 650 gun shops out of business. So, I mean, the financial burden is huge. He talked about 5 million. I have numbers that are a little bit higher based on the internet, but here nor there. How does the committee going to fill that gap for the state budget, whether it's 5 million or 40 million, and you're going to lose jobs? I'm going to put my people out of work. There's no way that this can be sustained if this passes. The insurance companies have already said they will no longer insure us. It's going to be a real problem. That is my testimony. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Questions from the committee? Senator Kissel?
Thank you very much, Chairman Stafford. But while you're here, like, how much insurance do you carry now and how much is your premium, if you're willing to say?
$20,000 a year.
We're
How
all in a
much
sort
coverage?
of,
Okay, you
All
know,
right, well,
instead-
that's not
hold on,
working.
Hold on, hold on. Sir, are you gonna testify later?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
so
so you want
let's-
to, so then I'll
let's-
defer. I'm
Let's
sorry.
hold just,
Save that question.
okay,
I'll defer. Sorry about that.
that's okay. No, I just want to make sure we.
I
got
just
it on
wanted the
good
record.
question
quote,
answered
DJ.
properly. That's all.
No, I appreciate it, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you not speculating and guessing. We'll let him answer it when he comes up
Perfect.
later then.
yeah, and that's exactly the point, is to be able to
Further
close
questions
any
or
kind of
comments?
firearms
Questions?
business, whether
If
it's
not,
firearms
thanks for being with
themselves
us.
or
Thank you very much.
accessories, be able to close them down.
All right, next up will be Bryant, Mercado.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee. My name is Bryant Mercado. I'm the membership coordinator of CCDL, and I am testifying in opposition to HB 7042. A good tort system accomplishes three things. It compensates injuries for wrongful conduct, deters actions that produce harm, and punishes people who wrongfully harm others. This bill does not properly achieve any goals. The bill goes beyond. The statute offers punitive damages for simple negligence actions and gives standing to additional plaintiffs who have not suffered any direct harm. The
Yeah,
the
whenever they
burden-shifting
whenever they
provision of
ban
this
these
bill
guns,
on line 80 does not deter
which are the
actions
most
that produce
popular
harm,
guns that
nor does it
stores
properly
sell,
punish actors who
you're
actually
knocking
do
out,
harm
in
people.
some cases,
The bill contains two
shoot,
circumstances
north of
in which a plaintiff
90%
can
of their
create a
inventory.
rebuttable presumption.
So
and
yeah, a lot of
remember,
shops in a
failed to
lot of these
implement
states have
reasonable.
shut.
This section makes it easier to punish one industry member action other and makes it easier for plaintiffs to target additional parties rather than solely hold the actor closest to the harm responsible. Perhaps the most egregious part of this bill is the fee shifting
Blue
provision
Curtain
on
Burner,
line
what's up, my
104.
brother?
This fee shifting provision will have the effect of driving up the settlement value of cases without regard to their merit. This isn't a new idea. The effects of fee shifting provisions are widely known and discussed in detail by the Harvard Center for Law, Economics, and Business going back to the 90s. The effect will be to discourage industry members from litigating disputes in good faith for fear of being bludgeoned with attorney's fees if they lose. It's a clear limitation on the ability of industry members to defend themselves in litigation. This bill is not going to help us accomplish what this bill is not going to help us accomplish what a good tort system ought to do. This bill is not going to prevent gun violence. The only thing this bill will accomplish is stacking the deck in court against members of the industry. This bill unfairly singles out the firearms industry in a way that would be appalling anywhere else in any other industry. I urge the members of this committee to oppose HB 7042. Thank you for your time.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thanks for being with us. Joshua Serafino.
Hi, my name's Joshua Serafino. I live in Southington, Connecticut, and I own Lock and Load Firearms. I am a firearms instructor. Chairpersons, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I strongly oppose HB 7042, which unfairly targets the firearm industry and threatens lawful businesses such as mine while doing nothing to stop actual gun violence. This bill violates federal law, specifically the protections of lawful commerce in Arms Act, which protects firearm manufacturers, distributors, and retailers from lawsuits based on crimes committed by third parties. No other industry is held responsible for unlawful misuse of its products, and this bill sets a dangerous precedence. It also places an unfair burden on lawful businesses by requiring them to implement vague, reasonable controls and exposing them to endless lawsuits. How can a business be expected to predict every possible misuse of an item? The real problem isn't legal gun sales, it's illegal gun trafficking, repeat offenders, and the lack of law enforcement action against violent criminals. This bill invites frivolous lawsuits by allowing individuals, municipalities, and the Attorney General to sue gun manufacturers and retailers. This will drive up costs, force small businesses to close, and limit access to firearms to law-abiding citizens. It will do nothing to reduce crime, but it will put people out of work and infringe on constitutional rights. If we truly want to reduce gun violence, we should focus on stricter enforcement of existing gun laws, cracking down on illegal firearms trafficking, and ensure violent offenders are held accountable. This bill does none of that. It just scapegoats the firearm industry. Lastly, I want to point out that we're a point of contact state, which means when I run a background through the NIC system, I have to contact the Special Licensing and Firearms Unit, which is part of the Connecticut State Police. So if this bill is going to hold me accountable, is this bill also going to hold them accountable for running background checks? For those reasons and more, I urge you to reject HB 7042 and instead pursue real solutions that target criminals and not lawful businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thanks for being with us. Jennifer Dinnan.
Good morning, Co-Chair Winfield, Vice Chairs Flex, Gadkar Wilcox, and distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm Professor Jennifer Dineen. I'm Associate Director of UConn's Arms Center for Gun Injury Prevention and a member of the faculty at the University of Connecticut. I am here today in support of HB 7042 and HB 7137. HB 7042 is a crucial step in incentivizing responsible control over the use and transfer of firearms and related products. History has shown that industry liability is an effective tool for improving health and safety outcomes for products that through negligence, accidents, or misuse can cause harm. Even when manufacturers do not voluntarily enhance safety measures, evidence demonstrates that litigation can drive.
These are the same arguments we always hear.
Regarding
You
fuel
get
tank
emotional,
fires in the
uninformed
Ford
arguments
Pinto
from the
led
anti-gun side.
Ford to recall and modify the vehicle.
And from the
Connecticut is not the first state
pro-gun
to
side, you
pursue
hear
this
people actually
strategy to
talking about
reduce
facts
gun-related
and
and
real-world
crime. To
effects.
date, 8 other states have similar laws.
And
New
these
York State
leftists
Senate and
still
their Office of
continue to
Attorney General
push
report
these
that New York's
retarded
gun
gun laws.
industry accountability law, in just its first year, closed dozens of venues that contributed to illegal firearm sales and trafficking. This includes addressing straw purchasing. Research further indicates stronger regulations significantly reduce straw purchases and illegal gun transfers. By passing HB 7042 and promoting responsible business practices, Connecticut will reaffirm its commitment to reducing firearm injuries and gun-related crimes. The bill encourages responsible firearm industry practices that enhance the safety of our state. A critical gap in the background check system. Research out of the University of Alabama, Birmingham links firearm laws of some states to firearm deaths in other states. In absence of a comprehensive federal firearm policy recognizing the impact of neighboring states' firearm laws and limiting firearm or gun-related harms, passing HB 7137 provides Connecticut, which, as you all know, has multiple
because
state borders and is part
that
of
could never be manipulated
both a New England area and a tri-state area. And support both of those strategies. To end, the research is consistent. Stronger life rates, even after we
it's all
account for
emotional arguments.
demographic and
There's no
sociological
factual
factors.
data.
Laws that enhance background checks and purchase requirements, such as HB 7402 and HB 7137, are linked to reductions in firearm injury and death rates. Thank you for your time and consideration this morning.
Thank you. Senator Kissel.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for coming and testifying. I believe that you work at my alma mater, but you had stated at the outset that you're also affiliated with some other organization, I think.
It's part of UConn.
So what I'm not familiar with it.
Sure. So the UConn Arms Center, ARMS stands for Advancing Research Methods and Scholarship. And what we do is take evidence-based research done by scholars all over the United States and translate it. So we try to make research that can provide evidence on health and safety outcomes, specifically related to gun injuries of all type. to policymakers or practitioners or anyone who wants to make evidence-based decisions on either
And we
policies or
manipulate the
program
data.
decisions.
So the fact that its acronym is ARMS, is it just associated with weapons research or is it just?
No.
So who decided that, is this your initiative or is this on behalf of that center? Are you testifying here as an individual or?
No, as the associate director of ARMS. So ARMS is all about firearms related research. Yes, if that answers your question.
Right.
And I am here as a researcher, not as a general citizen.
Who will approach second issues and guns that this group is taking?
It is all evidence-based. So there is not an approach. I am not ever advocating for a particular direction. We don't talk about pro or anti, we talk about policies, either permissive, restrictive, right? So policies that make firearms more accessible or firearms less accessible. And the goal is always better health or safety outcomes, however that is done.
Well, what you do
Some
is
policies
you
we have
start
good
your research
evidence
out
that they
with
are
the
worth
end
pursuing,
goal in
and some
mind, and you
policies we
force
don't
the
have
data
good
to fit the
evidence.
goal.
You're one of the ones that came to this conclusion that the evidence comported this.
So we have good evidence from scholars all over the country, for example, that a background check system reduces deaths. It reduces suicides. Right. We have good, and we also have good evidence that neighboring states' firearm laws can
There is
impact
no
homicide and
evidence that
suicide
points to
rates
that
in your own state. I
whatsoever.
think, Senator, you brought up the Illinois-Chicago conundrum, right? And while Illinois, its neighbors do not, right? Indiana, Kentucky, Iowa are some of the most permissive, Missouri, right? Missouri may be the most permissive firearm context in the United States. In assessment means they have no laws that restrict who can carry or where you can carry or who can own. And in fact, they have laws that make it more permissible. And their view state is that the more people become safer, right? They have a different philosophy on what is their state's safety. So that's how we at ARMS approach these things. It's a very academic view. And so I think Illinois provides an example for 137. Yeah, I have the bill number for why it is important to include.
Well, that's one way to look at it. Well, thank you very much, Professor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I bet it is, Brooke. I bet it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't see how you
wanna
do it and stay as calm as you do.
7137.
Sure.
And understanding that we have 11 misdemeanor disqualifiers, Connecticut. 10 of them have to be a conviction in the last 20 years. And one of them, conviction post January 1, 2015, that being 21A279. And that's possession of illegal drugs. Are you aware of any other state that has some sort of similar scheme as far as what 7173 is proposing here?
Today,
Okay,
I
I'm
haven't.
hearing that, but you're here in support of this bill, and I'm just trying.
Yeah, so what I can tell you is that when we look at states that consider other neighboring states' firearm policies, they have better outcomes, lower homicide, lower fire homicide rates in states that not consider.
Consideration is so there can be various.
That-
Just trying to. You've come here today. We're the legislature.
Yes.
Right. You're an academic I pay for your salary, right? I get pay my taxes.
Some of it.
You,
Yeah.
well. So I'm concerned, my salary is going,
Representative Fishman,
no,
let's,
I appreciate that, but I heard support for the bill, and then I'm asking about the content. And
Consider means acknowledge.
hold-
So
hold-
factor
hold on,
into.
hold on, ma'am, hold on.
Yes.
hold on. Representative Fishman, let's frame a question. Let's start this fresh. Why don't you frame a question related to the bill and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'll go back to my original. Are you aware of any other state that has adopted a law that's similar to 7173?
Give you an accurate information.
So you might think that there's one state.
I will pull the paper that I cited in my testimony and make sure I give you an accurate answer as to which state or states. Yes.
Okay. So assuming that to be the case, do you know how law enforcement in Connecticut determines whether or not somebody is in violation that's a bad question. It's quite clear that if somebody has one of the 11 misdemeanors on their record, they're disqualified, right? They can't be issued a permit. Okay.
Yes.
So are you aware of how law enforcement in Connecticut would review the laws of 49 other states to ascertain whether or not it's possible that the crime would fit into the same disqualifier?
I am not.
Okay. I tried to play with this and just, okay. So one of our misdemeanor disqualifiers is stalking in the second degree. Okay. And I just picked a state, and it happened to be it's either south or north. Okay. Stalking. And they talk about a course of conduct. It's a pattern of conduct consisting of 2 or more acts evidencing a continuity of purpose. Now, when we look at the Connecticut statute, stalking in the second degree, it says 2 or more acts, including but not limited to acts in which a person directly or indirectly through a third party by any action, method, device, or means, including electronic or social media, follows, lies, and waits for, monitors, observes, surveils. So Connecticut deals with third parties in the context of stalking in the second degree. North Dakota, South Dakota doesn't. Do you agree with me that maybe law enforcement would have a difficulty figuring? That's just one state.
I agree with you that there would certainly need to be a system put in place that would expedite each time.
Okay,
On
different
connection.
municipalities, right? So, on pistol permits, the application initially goes to the local police, and they're the ones initially that decide whether or not to misdemeanor disqualifier. So now you've got one detective in Shelton that looks at this examination of this one particular situation and may feel it it's close enough. I'm going to err on the side of caution and I'm going to say yes. And then you've got one in New London who says, no, it's not the same elements because the statute essentially, for which the essential elements are substantially the same, right? It's a subjective. So I'm just trying to, I guess the problem is in Connecticut, we have erasure, right? There's many misdemeanors and felonies, right? they're being automatically erased under operation of law, and we are an outlier with regard to that. So you may have somebody that has one of those outlying conviction that would have been erased in Connecticut. However, it's still on their record from the other state, and with equal protection problem here. So I look forward to looking at your written testimony and the identification of that one state. I'm not aware of any state.
Yeah, it's not one state, and I'm happy to follow up. I'm looking at it's a number of states, and the group of states varies by the particular laws. So I'm happy to follow up with you after this. The paper is cited, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you if you have additional questions.
Yeah, I know, I'm aware of other states that have their own misdemeanor disqualifiers, but by public policy, they say, and maybe there's a way to work this out where you just say, if you are convicted of a crime involving force against another human being within a certain period of time, then it would cover everything, right?
Sure.
Maybe that's a way to perhaps get there so that we don't have to get into whether or not stalking in the second is stalking in the second here in Connecticut, right? So, I mean, I'm not aware of any state that, I'm aware of states that have their own misdemeanor disqualifiers, okay? But I'm not aware of any state that says, or another state that is, similar with essential elements. So that's the test that I'm looking for, with regard to the language before us. So thank you for coming here today, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let me just follow up on that disqualifier point. So somebody under current law, someone who was convicted of stalking in North Dakota,
Mhm.
they move to Connecticut sort of the day after they're convicted.
Yes.
Maybe they had a suspended sentence, they're on probation, but allowed, so they move to Connecticut as soon as they're able. What stops them under our current automatic disqualifier from applying for a firearm permit that first day they move to Connecticut?
I'm not sure.
Right. That's the point. There is nothing. I mean, but if somebody was convicted of stalking in the second degree in Connecticut, they're prevented from getting a firearm. So we are treating our own citizens more harshly in that regard than someone who literally just moves into the state, may have no ties to the community,
Correct.
may have, the police know nothing about other than they just moved here from North Dakota. They're allowed to apply for a firearm permit. I mean, maybe the police department can deny it on suitability grounds, but then it gets appealed up as opposed to the person in Connecticut who they're out there, they can't get it. It just doesn't.
Related to a domestic violence offense, they would be, and in order of protection, they would be federally prohibited, I think.
That's my understanding.
Right. And so, and there is a lot of good literature that is a predictor of future homicide or violent behavior. Right. And so when I say we're closing a critical sort of gap, I mean, Connecticut has very robust background check laws, and the state takes responsibility very seriously. And I think we try very, very hard to balance protection of a Second Amendment right with public safety.
Well, and I don't.
But I think that this is a gap.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hear an outcry from folks saying we need to get rid of automatic disqualifiers in Connecticut. I mean,
No.
if people are convicted of certain crimes that we've determined should disqualify you, sure. Maybe if you go a certain period of time and that's erased from your record, then yes, of course, you can apply for a permit. But that year after you're convicted or 2 years after you're convicted, we as a society have said you should not be able to get a firearm permit here in our state. And I don't hear a whole lot of opposition to that.
No, and I mean, to get back to, I can't recall, I apologize, whether it was Representative Fishbein or Senator Kissel, but the approach that we take at the University of Connecticut Arms Center, the decision is not just one of it makes sense. The decision is based on a good amount of rigorous research that shows that those behaviors are precursors to other violent behaviors, right? And that when you restrict access to firearms for people who have been convicted of those behaviors, you reduce injury and death rates by firearms, and that there's not a replacement effect by other weapons. And so it is a policy decision that is very much evidence-based.
Appreciate it. Representative DiCaprio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Professor, for sharing today. Do you know when New York passed that legislation that we're talking about in 7042, similar to 7042?
I can give you the exact date. I think it was 2021, but if you give me just a minute, it was July 6th of 2021.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And in your research, were you able to determine whether violent crime in New York has an effect by that legislation being in place?
So there is reports that violent crime went down. I have not. It's a little soon to make a definitive causal argument for that. So the states that have passed these laws have done so relatively recently. New York being the one with the most, the longest track record of 2021. Everybody else has been 2022, but most in 2023 or 2024. And so that doesn't give a lot of time for rigorous evaluation. New York claims that the crimes that they were targeting with this bill decreased significantly, but that came out of their own report, and I haven't seen external research, so I'm a little bit cautious about using numbers.
Because I would be interested in the data, what the data is showing for that, and
Yeah, so in my written,
the trend, I know that this may not be the only factor, but certainly would be good for us to have data.
certainly,
behind that.
in my written testimony, I have cited New York's
All
report.
right, so I got to get out of
So
here
you
in just a
can-
minute.
You can access it, and I'm happy to send it to you.
But I
if
am going to
that's
restart
easier,
this back up
but I have not seen another academic.
as soon as I get back to work.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just brief follow-up on that. From the New York data,
Not just a minute
do you
before I
know
got to get out of
how
here.
many local gun manufacturers have gone out of business as a result of the New York law being passed in 2021?
I do not. They only cited a brief like period of time, and they talked about illegal traffickers, and so they didn't about the overall number or the number relative to the total number of businesses.
So we don't know if there's more or less gun
No.
stores in New York than there were in
I
2020.
can't answer that question. No.
Okay. For the Representative Howard?
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah.
I had to take a look, running between three places. Yeah, I was listening to your dialogue with the chairman when I came in regarding the comparisons and him making a point that we're treating Connecticut residents more strict, and I inclined to agree with him. As written, we are. However, the clean slate language that we passed in this legislature erases many of the statutory disqualifiers that are in misdemeanors in statute, right? Are you familiar with this?
Oh, a little bit. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't want to get. I'm not an attorney.
I guess
so
what
don't
I'm
wanna
driving
get
at is your point, and I too, as a legislator, try to my entire background's in public safety, right? So I try to weigh gun rights against public safety the best that I can. And your statement of that the data, I think you said the data, I think you said literature, that these crimes are indicators of future violence. You were talking about those 11 particular misdemeanors in statute.
Some of them, yes.
Right. So is there a time frame at which point in that, and I haven't looked at the research, maybe you don't know, is there a time frame? Because it's clean slate erases them after 7 years for misdemeanors, right? So is there a time frame in the research? So if I commit one of these misdemeanors and I commit no other crime for 7 months, am I significantly less likely to be violent with a firearm?
All right,
I
let me
think,
shut this down for
I
right
can't
now,
answer that
guys,
blanket.
and
I
I will
think in
catch you
some
perks
ways,
here in just a
for
little
some things,
bit.
it depends on the
Probably
particular
be about
misdemeanor. I
30
wouldn't be
minutes or
comfortable giving
so,
you
and then I'll crank this back
flat
up.
out answer. I think for some things,
So
definitely.
What if I
we'll
said to
we'll
you
hang out and
that
chat some
somebody
more.
moves into the state of Connecticut
All
and
make
assume
our
we can
head hurts
define a
listening to these
comparable
folks.
statute because they're
So
not.
much love,
New
guys.
York's
We'll see you in a
kinda
little
easy
bit.
because our penal code was, largely replicated from New York,
Sure.
right? But Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, other places.